Hey, what's up everybody? BDF 44 coming at you with another video. Alright, so turning on the camera because I am bored. I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to talk about, but I did want to address everybody. Thank you all for coming to my channel. Um, I literally have no idea what I'm going to say. This is not planned. This is one of those situations where I didn't have anything I wanted to see on the internet. Didn't have anything that I really wanted to do necessarily. I've worked out, done all the art I want to do for the day. Check my playlist, um, collection of music. Didn't feel like really sorting through that, making anything happen. Not quite tired enough to go to sleep. Plus, if I go to sleep now, it is literally like 9 o'clock my time, so I'll be up probably about 3 a.m., 4 a.m. And yeah, so I am going to bother you guys because that is what's up. So I guess I'll make this a therapy session. It was a weird situation. It ain't even nothing worth talking about, honestly. It's just I've had one of those ingrown hairs in my head, um, and it's caused me a great deal of discomfort, and it's affected everything today. It's one of those weird situations where if you get like certain things that hurt really affect you, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's overly painful. It just means that because of the area it's in on my head, it's felt somewhat like a headache. I don't know, but it's been affecting me all day, so I kind of been off. But all in all, I'm in pretty good spirits, man. I'm looking at this crypto market. My favorite crypto has damn near tanked to the ground. So naturally, my inclination is to grab some. So that's what I did. I grabbed some more Doggle on Mars, and I'm looking to double that um, position, which is unbelievable seeing it at this price. Because for me, when I first started buying Doggle on Mars, I did not have good trading habits, and it had just run all the way up, and I bought it at the top. So you gotta understand, I bought this thing at like 300% more than what it's at right now. So to see these levels, it's like, my God, like you can't even imagine how much Doggle on Mars I could have accumulated if I would have taken all the money I've put into it and bought it now. And I think that's what all the smart people do. So I'm trying to learn how to be smart in that way and learn how to be more patient with my transactions. You guys obviously know I've made a lot of trades and stuff like that over the course of the time I've had this channel going, and have made some good moves, but I've made more bad ones. So um, learning that discipline and being more patient is helping me. The last thing I talked about in my therapy session is actually something that's carried with me, a concept that I'm really holding on to, and that's the scroll theory is what I call it, which was, as I said to you guys, basically waiting for something to happen rather than jumping on it and making it happen outside of when it's supposed to take place. Timing is everything, and sometimes it's just best to wait for the right time to take on what it is that you want. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that waiting is in fact what you need to do in every situation. Each situation needs to be read for what it is, but having a lack of patience or ignoring the need to time something is a mistake, and that's basically what the scroll theory was about for me. I encourage you guys to check out my last therapy session to help explain where that actually means, what the scroll actually comes from. But nevertheless, it's taught me to be more patient, to not really be so hasty and leaning on my own wants and understanding about what comes with those wants. So as I repeat myself in regards to that, I've learned to now try to apply that to trades and just say, you know what, this isn't the price I'm looking for. The risk, the fear of missing out, that FOMO is never any good for me. The only thing I end up missing out on is my money. And that's honestly the problem. You for myself, when I bought this Doggle on Mars a couple days ago, I didn't wait till it got to a point where it is now. You know what I mean? You always want to wait to see where something is going to land when it's free falling, obviously. Because even though it's one of those situations where you fully believe in what you own, and you know that these prices are great, you still want to get the most bang for your buck. because ultimately that gives you the most amount of what it is you could purchase for the man, bang for your buck. So it's one of those situations where I would have loved to have just waited a few hours, a couple hours, as always, to get more. But all in all, um, this particular time I didn't throw all of the money that I wanted to invest in at once. So that's an evolution of my trading, and so we're waiting for the next real dip, so I can get back all of the doggone Mars that I ultimately sold at a very, very, very small portion of the price it was purchased at. So I'm excited about that. Like I said, I never lost faith in my doggone Mars. I just sold it during the Terra Luna craziness. So yeah, had every intention of buying it back, but I had no idea that these prices would be available to me when it was time to do so. I was happy to buy this thing, as you guys have already heard, at much higher prices. So yeah, enough of that. What else is going on? Art is great. I'm having a blast on this journey. My evolution as an artist is coming along pretty strong. I think I just crossed the 2,100 mark in terms of pieces that I've made since October. And it's just something I'm really enjoying. It doesn't take long for me to doodle, you know what I mean? It's not like I'm over here making portraits, and I've never been trained or anything like that, but I'm finding that people really do take well to what it is I'm doing. And like I said, the progress is pretty incredible, to be honest with you. See how fast I've gotten better at the things that I'm doing. So super excited about that. Of course, the playlist thing, that's going strong. Been at that for many years. So, just continuing to churn at what it is that I love to do. At this point, it's one of those situations where I talked to you guys about what was going on in my life in regards to my ex kind of coming back into my life, shaking some things up. I think we've come to an understanding. I understand it now. She watches the channel, so that's a new aspect of things. But at the same time, it's like, I'm not going to change how I do things just because new people are going to be watching that I may know. I think when I first started this channel, it was one of those situations where I wanted to intentionally keep myself at a level where I didn't have to necessarily have to be held accountable for what I say. That was the intention, to just get on here and for my own purposes, just share whatever I have to say, not necessarily thinking about what the consequences would be of what was said, because I knew I had a good filter anyway. It wasn't like I was going to talk too crazy, but not worry about necessarily what was said, not worry about oversharing, but just more so getting out what is in, because I spent a great deal of my life hiding my talents, a great deal of my life not really willing to share all of the things that I was working on over the years, poetry mostly. So as I've grown older and grown confident and have, worked on some of these things that I love to do, it's like now I want to share all that I do. So when I turn on the camera, I look to do just that, to progress in what it is that I'm doing. And as I continue to grow the channel, I'm finding that I'm continuing to appreciate the fact that I'm still not necessarily being held accountable for everything that I say. I don't have to see people with everything that I say. I don't have to really, really answer for that or hold my feet to the fire for some of the mistakes or misspeaks that take place. And as you continue to grow, that no longer is the case. Now when more people that follow you know who you are in person, you have to take into account how you come off to them and the changes that they may see in you and all of those different things that really I never really wanted to take account for. This was a personal thing for me starting this channel, you know what I mean? It was for my own mental health, it was for my own relief and healing or what have you. And just, for me to address certain things that I really appreciate, basketball, stuff like that. And it's kind of taken on a life of its own. I personally did not think I would keep the channel going past a couple videos. I figured I'd upload a couple videos and then get cold feet and leave it alone. But I kept going and kept going and kept going, and I'm in a good place. I'm in a good place in terms of the basketball aspects of what we do here. I love what I'm doing. I'm getting to a point where I'm confident in what I'm doing. I like the different topics that we have on different other aspects of the channel that are growing. Of course, this therapy session. And I just appreciate everybody's coming along for the journey. You know what I mean? I don't promote. I don't ask anybody to share. I don't ask anybody to even like or do anything like that. But I always appreciate uh, that people, you know, take from it what they will, and then proceed about it how they feel. I don't, I don't. I'm not looking to blow up necessarily, unless I'm in a space where there's a purpose to the voice that I have. You know what I mean? A real purpose. If I can do something real with the voice, that's cool. But for now, it's just me venting, and if people appreciate what they hear here, it means a lot to me that you stick around. That's the best way I know how to put it. Because I like what I'm doing, and you make it make sense. You know what I mean? That's what it really comes down to. So yeah, that's what it is, man. I just want to come here, show appreciation, get a little therapy session in, tell you guys how I'm feeling, stay awake. You know what I mean? And just appreciate the fact that you'll be alive for another day, literally alive for another day. There's a lot of stuff going on outside. Seems nothing's certain. I'm paying attention to the financial stuff as always. AMC and GME and obviously Dog Along Mars, what I just got through telling you guys about, and I'm just looking at how everything's really difficult. But there's one thing's for certain, and this is something I can confidently say: there is always people in the background who are wealthy enough to hedge themselves against any bad situation. They're wealthy. They can, no matter what it is, if it's war, famine, fire and brimstones raining from the sky, there's always an entity somewhere, people who exist, who are wealthy enough to sit in a bunker and capitalize off of whatever's taking place. If it's fire and brimstone, that means they can take place in the cleanup. They can help the defense, and they can help with the cleanup. If it's a situation where everybody's falling apart, they can help bury everybody. If it's that's how bad and how morbid it can get when you start talking about those who are in position to make things happen. And so, because I understand they exist, and because I know that they're not really affected by the economy going to hell, I also understand that they go shopping when the economy goes to hell. I understand that when your crypto's all the way on the ground, that's when they're going to scoop up all those low prices that everybody's running away from because they're afraid of losing all their money. They are never going to lose all of their money, because whatever the heck is going on, as I said, they're hedged against it. So that means they're sitting comfortable. Wherever they are, they're safe, they're comfortable, and they're thinking about making money. And most importantly, they're on a mission to make themselves richer, and in doing so, they will capitalize on what it is we are not purchasing. So the key is to remember they exist and have money when it's time for them to go shopping. That's what several years of making mistakes and reacting to the market and listening to people who have greater knowledge and all of that has done for me. It's helped me understand that those people exist, and because they exist, the market itself will continue to exist no matter how we're doing. So as long as we have money when they do, and go shopping when they do, when they get fat and rich off what it is that they've purchased today, you will too get fat and rich off your portion of what it is that they purchased. That's how the game goes out here, man. That's how it goes. And when you understand that, it makes you really depressed, because you understand that all of this is very controlled. You can very easily see where those same people can just fix a lot of these issues, but they don't necessarily need to, or maybe it doesn't necessarily benefit what their ultimate goal is to do that, and that's pretty depressing when you don't know why that is. But nevertheless, I'm on a mission at this point to try to be as smart as I can during this financial crisis that everybody is reacting to. And hopefully I can get fat and happy somehow in the process of this process. So wish me luck. I wish you all luck. You know what I mean? I know it's hard for everyone. It's definitely hard for myself too. So we're just gonna get through it together. And for those of us who are in position to succeed, who don't have these financial issues that I'm referring to, that's a good thing. You know what I mean? It's a really good thing. I think that it's always important to be aware of the the presence of desperation. You know what I mean? That's what I always try to encourage everyone to be aware of. I think it's so easy when you're a person who has a very lot, a person of means, to forget that the presence of desperation brings about a certain interior strength, internal strength rather, that can't be duplicated and it can't really be related to. You just gotta trust that it exists and respect its relentlessness when an opportunity comes about, to get out of that poverty. And I think that desperation is something that, if you were in that circumstance for a prolonged period of time, to which you would get used to those circumstances, you would respect that desperation and even engage in whatever it takes to receive what it is that you need to receive to get out of that desperate space. And the importance of understanding the prolonged extent of being in that space, because you can simulate that. You can go somewhere and sit in the most meager of spaces and remove all that you have around you to try to simulate what poverty actually feels like. But the presence of being able to remove yourself from that, or the distant notion that you could come back around to having a peace of mind and having safety, will take you away from actually relating to those circumstances, even in living in those circumstances, because there's no escape from those circumstances, and that creates a different point of view. You know what I mean? A different point of view than just putting yourself in situations and trying to live, humbly. You know what I mean? As people say, you can be very, very wealthy and then try to work at McDonald's for a month. You still can leave. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, you can go back home. And because you can't relate to what you're dealing with there, because they don't get to leave, man. And not only do they not get to leave, but they get to dream of a reality where they could leave and long for such. And that is something that you won't have as well. So it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of things that I think is a disconnect. And when there is the presence of disconnect, there becomes the presence of not caring. What's the word? I don't have the word right now, but just being indifferent. Yeah. When that disconnect is present, the indifference is there too. So a lot of times it becomes a situation where it's like us versus them, as opposed to having that humanity take over, to where I feel, and this is my perspective, I feel a lot of people who may be very, 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 very wealthy would otherwise, in some cases, may want to desperately help people who are down here, but because of the presence of that desperation, they may not feel safe enough to want to do that. It may not be wise for them to just come down and touch the people. Maybe the people, it's a great majority of people who are going to love them, but it's going to be a few who are not going to want to see you help the people. It's going to be a few who want to take everything for themselves. It's going to be a few people who are just going to have different agendas about how to maneuver the situation. We'll try to use every aspect of it to do so, and it just becomes a situation where maybe you can't help everybody. Maybe they drain you of all your resources. Maybe you can only help but for so long, and then you get to a point where people hate you because you only help so much. It's like there's no winning situation. I was listening to LeBron James on his podcast talk about how he felt during the pandemic and how he was in this position of feeling helpless because he's still a human being, but he knows he's in a position to where he could sit in his Brentwood apartment and chill while everybody else was dealing with COVID in a way that they couldn't really protect themselves from like he could because of his money. And it's understood that presence of that humanity can still exist, but the conditioning of the mind and the realities of the circumstances, the things that people have to guard against, can keep people separated from one another. And I think being on opposite ends of that and having different things, as I said, to guard against, can make it so that we don't necessarily have conversations that could otherwise bring forth that humanity that connects us with one another. Which is why I am a person from an apartment that can lobby for millionaires getting even more money. You see what I'm saying? Because that's where that comes from. Or I can sit on this camera in a position that I'm in and still say, hey, I think a guy like Kanye West should not have people taking pictures of his kids when he's out and about. Or a guy like Michael Jackson should not have had all the paparazzi attention that maybe he got unwanted during his lifetime. It was like those type of things, or otherwise from my position, I should not care about. Why? Because those people have more than me. So therefore, in the world that we're in, that's supposed to make it so that I have no humanity for them, because there's an emphasis placed on the things that they have as opposed to the person that they are. So I can sit here and see myself with a smile on my face in my apartment, and then see them in their mansion crying at their eyes out. But for whatever reason, I'm not supposed to value the fact of my happiness versus the presence of their comfort in their home over the happiness that I have in my heart versus the agony that they're feeling in their moment. I think there's balance to be had, because I'd love to be in their position. They'd love to have my happiness. But the point is, there should be some humanity between the two of us. There should be some desire within myself to see them not to cry their eyes out. And there should be some desire for them to see me not sitting in a position where I don't have enough to take care of whatever. So I think that once we get to a point where we see one another as human, start knocking down the walls that keep us from building that desire to care for one another, then we can start. We will always have issues if we don't start working on that. I think that the classism issue and the presence of different levels of class and the presence of human beings, it's always going to be a part of us. We're always going to be in a position where there are going to be people who have a whole lot and a very little. But I think the thing that breaks down those barriers in a way and overcomes the hatred of desperation and the fear of losing everything is the presence of communication that can bring us together so that we can see one another as human beings, and then from there start to trade and share in ways that will want to see one another succeed. That way, even though if I have a $6, $7, $8 billion in my wallet, I can see the fruit in sitting down with somebody who doesn't have nothing and sharing in their happiness, and maybe even breaking bread with them, giving them opportunities to maybe fish them for themselves and make some money for themselves. And we can share with one another, because I can guarantee you this: if we can bring those two people together, you can find answers to a lot of different questions that are not being answered right now. That's what I can tell you. I think some of the most important things that are taking place, or some of the most important things that could be taking place, are not being taken place because of the presence of that disconnect. You know what I mean? I really believe that. I think when you start thinking about the concept of what human beings actually can do when they work together, when you think about all the things that we've already accomplished as working together, and you think about the different things that are dividing people, you think about the different things, racism and classism and sexism and all these different isms and different primitive mindsets that no longer apply to the world that we're in, we start realizing that we could break down those barriers and then find ways of working together, respecting one another, developing that environment of care that is missing. That is okay that it's missing because we're strangers, but that we stay strangers doesn't necessarily have to keep being the case. Now, I'm not saying I'm naive to think that people are not going to continue to be ambitious. Obviously, people are going to do what they want to do. The presence of different situations are going to make it so that it's always complicated between human beings. But I think as we continue to evolve in general, maybe we can start working on some of these other aspects of things that we work on every day. You know, disciplines, working on our mental health. That can start cutting down on some other things that we start having issues with. Some of the issues that we can't seem to get along or agree upon, a lot of times I think have to do with the way that we approach one another with a certain level of defense or a certain level of, again, indifference. The presence of not having that communication to build that trust, to build that relationship, and let that flourish into love or flourish into respect or flourish into business partners or what have you. Because we have so many different divides, it just makes it very, very difficult in my mind for us to move forward in such a way that allows us to evolve properly and have these group activities and different things that I think can work between people who may have a lot and have a little. You know, I think that, or people who have different racial differences or some of these different things. You know, I think about just the concept of the possibilities, you know. I like the possibilities. If you follow me, like I find a guy a random guy in like Peru, right? Just find some kid and he has a really, really high IQ or something like that, and then snatch him up, put him in a position, and then take some random genius kid who's like somewhere where he's further away than you can imagine. Maybe somewhere in Hawaii. Grab a kid from Hawaii, he's genius. Now go to Somalia, grab a genius kid from there. You put them all together. There's nothing in the world that's gonna bring them together at all. Is basically what I'm saying. Nothing. But if you get those three people together, they can find the answer to this, that, the third, the fourth, and the fifth, and the sixth. But because we're ignoring these places, just for example, I'm not saying that these different places are specific to my mind. I'm just using them as places to reference. Bring those kids together, put them in a position to get the most out of one another and work together. I guarantee you, in this theory, they can come up with a cure to AIDS, cure to cancer, maybe some type of different way of maneuvering our entire financial system. I don't know, but the point is, a lot of our unanswered questions are in places that we ignore with people that aren't getting cultivated for reasons that stem from the stuff that we've been talking about here, which is just simple indifference. We don't care because you're a stranger. It's not my problem. I can't relate to you. I think that's the next evolution of where we need to go. Being able to stay locked in with one another even though we cannot relate to one another. That is the next level of evolution in humanity. I swear to you it is. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people around me say, I'm not listening to that, or I'm not messing with that because I can't relate to it. I'm not going to venture into it because it doesn't approach the world that I have around me. In order for us to step out of that, from which I'm talking about, we gotta start wondering about worlds that we are not a part of. And that's a difficult thing, because a lot of times our sensibility, our religious practices and things like that don't allow us to step out of certain things. And that's okay. You gotta stay true to yourself. But for those of us who can, you will be those who press forward into the future. You will be the ones who will dictate terms later on, not those who are stuck in those bubbles. I'm sorry, no disrespect to anybody, but it's those of us who will venture outside of those bubbles that will ultimately help us stay out of those bubbles. And I think that that's ultimately where we need to be. Working with one another, putting people together that otherwise do not be together ever. Which is another reason why I want to reference LeBron James in that episode, because I think that's where this concept comes from in my mind. You know what I mean? He brings people together on that shop show that otherwise would not be in the room together for any other reason. And I love that aspect of what he's doing there. And I like that for anybody and everybody. We all need to get on that page and bring worlds together. Make people have conversations that will otherwise help them walk away feeling more relatable to one another. That's how we build a way forward around classism, in my opinion, around racism, in my opinion, around all this other stuff that has been put in place before we actually were born. A lot of stuff that was put in place by people who had agendas that we don't have, that don't have to live in the world we're in, who would, in fact, adjust their thinking to the world we're in if they were forced to live in today. And that's the reality of it. We cannot be as so naive as to think that those who lived before us, who created an entire way of living in the times that they were in at the time, could not adapt to the times we're in, or would not suggest that we should adapt away from the ways that they were in. They created the whole world we had. You don't think they would want to adjust to the one we're in? I just feel like we need to not act as if the ghosts are telling us how to live necessarily. They're telling us how they lived. And if you look at how certain things played out, you will understand why it's important we do things differently in a lot of cases. But I think that's why we keep finding ourselves in loops where we keep making the same mistakes over and over again as human beings, because we don't necessarily look at the ghosts as those we need to learn from, but those we need to follow. And there is a difference between the two. But it is what it is. I'm just speaking. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about at all. I think at the end of the day, from where I'm sitting, I just believe that there is more to us than what we've shown, based on different things that I've seen in my lifetime where people have come together, or people have overcome what have you. Children have come together. Children whose parents hate each other come together to be friends and stuff like that. That the possibilities and stuff. Which is why I always tell people to don't get caught up in what you got going on today so much. Don't be so quick to not want to forgive somebody. Don't be so quick to be harping on revenge forever, because I guarantee you, your children will have to react to that some way, and it may not be in the way you want them to. They may not take on your beef. They may turn inward and look at themselves and not like themselves, or turn and look at you and not like you. At some point in time, you just gotta see the fruit in letting go of some of the stuff that we hold on to that really doesn't help us. Ego, hatred, isms, being all judgmental and extra critical, those type of things, they have consequences on our children. They have consequences on how we feel later on in circumstances that are long past the moment you're in. Just gotta give more credence to the future as it pertains to how we handle the present. So that is my message. That's where all of this took me. That's why I knew I could turn on the camera when I'm bored and have nothing to say and come up with something, because my brain does that. And yeah, I'm thankful that you guys are here with me. I appreciate this particular therapy session. I'm gonna go ahead and listen to it now. My name is BDF 44. I thank you all for watching.